Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good day everyone. My name is Miss Wan Hasniza Ottoman and I'm from Sekolah Menengah Sains Sultan Muhammad Jiwa. So today, I'm going to share with you some tips and tricks for speaking paper SPM 1119. And today I'm going to cover part 1 and part 2 while my friend Madam Aiman will cover part 3. So now, boys and girls, let's look at the format. For part 1, we have simple warm-up session. And then we have the second phase, general questions. For example, they will ask you daily routines. For part 2, this will involve 3 to 4 minutes of your time, and each candidate will talk about a topic on his or her own. And then, each candidate will also answer briefly about his or her partner's topic. For example, in phase 1, these are some questions that you are going to answer. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Now, what's your name? Where do you live? Where do you come from? Or how do you come to school? So you can answer by saying, good morning, my name is Aida. I live in Kulim, Kedah. Or I come from Selama, Perak. Do not give one-word answer. Then you can answer the last question by saying, I come to school by walking since I live nearby. Or I come to school by car. For students who are staying at the hostel, you can answer it by saying, since I'm staying at the hostel, I come to school by walking. So for phase 2, there are a few topics that you need to be prepared with. For example, hobbies, dreams, routine, chores, or future plans. These are some examples of questions that you can think about before sitting for your speaking exam. For instance, how do you spend your leisure time? Where do you wish to stay in the future? What do you normally do after you wake up? Do you think doing chores is important? Or what do you plan to do this weekend? Next, alright, you have to look at the keyword when you want to answer these questions. For instance, if the question asks you, what do you plan to do this weekend? That means you either have to use, I'm going to play basketball with my friends and do some revision for the coming exam, or you have to use the word plan. Alright, for instance, after exam, I plan to apply for a part-time job as a receptionist at a nearby office. This will be easier for you because what you have to do is just copy the keyword and put it as your answer. Next, you can also be asked this question. What do you normally do after you wake up? So you can just answer it by saying, after waking up, I always or I normally. Alright, next, what do you do on weekends? Now, do you see the letter S at the end of the word weekend? Okay, that means every single weekend. So the word that you can use to answer this question is normally. Normally, I would do my laundry and spend some time chit-chatting with my friends. Do not answer it by saying a specific weekend. Next, let's take a look at part 2, individual long-term. Individual long-term, okay? Alright. Now, let's take a look at part 2, individual long-term. For this particular part, you will be given 20 seconds to prepare. And then you have to talk for 1 minute. Now, here's some tips for you. So, helpful tip 1, grammar. Do you know what kind of grammar that you have to use when answering this question? Now, let's take a look at the question. Lost item. Talk about an item you lost. Okay, you should say what the lost item was, when and where you lost the item, how you lost the item, how to prevent from losing an item. Did you notice the word lost? Lost itself is in past tense. So that means your answer should be in past tense. Alright, next, let's take a look at the next question. A family celebration. Talk about a family celebration you had recently. Okay, see the word had? So that means you also have to use past tense. Next, helpful tip 2. You have to change the pronoun. Do not use the same pronoun as suggested in the question. Okay, talk about a country you would like to visit. Okay, you should say the name of the country, why is it your favorite country, what you would do there, whether you would recommend the country to your friend, to your family and friends. So change it to I or my. So your answer should be like this. The country I would like to visit is Japan, for instance. Helpful tip 3. Do not read the question while answering it. For example, do not say something like this. Why is it your favorite country? Because it has a lot of interesting culture? Nope, do not say that. What you would do there? Because, nope, do not say that. Okay, that's not answering question. That's basically you reading the question and then answering at the end of it. What you should say is you lose the WH question and say, the name of the country I would like to visit is Japan. It is my favorite country because it is rich with culture. Okay, and I would do a lot of activities there. Alright? Next, helpful tip 4. Answer all the question. Do not leave any question unanswered if possible. Helpful tip 5. Follow the sequence. You can use first, after that, moreover, next, other than that, consequently, and lastly, finally. Do not start with so. This is a typical habit of students in my school. They would start something like this. So, a country I would like to visit. No, no, no. Do not do that, okay? Helpful tip number 6. Personal story. Now, this is very important for you to buy some time or to have more time to think about how to answer the question. Okay, you see, the first 2 lines can be of personal story. For instance, for this particular question, talk about your best friend, who your best friend is, how you met each other, why he or she is your best friend, if it is important to have a best friend. So introduce the topic with a statement and relate to personal experience in 2 lines. Okay, for example, you can introduce the topic by just saying, everybody has their very own best friend. Do not straight away answer the question because you might not have enough time to actually organize your thought of what to talk about. Okay, so when you introduce the topic using a statement, it will buy more time for you. Next, you can relate to personal experience in 2 lines. You can say something like this. Everybody must have someone that they can count on in their life. This person can be called a best friend and I have one too. Okay? And my best friend is Lina, for example. Next, helpful tip 7. In my league. Now choose points which are in your league. That means if you do not know how to speak or how to talk about the point, do not include it in your point. Okay? You do not have to talk about something real or your real experience. Choose something easy and suitable for you. For example, for the topic best friend, many students would attempt to talk about the real situation of how they met their best friend. But you do not have to do that, especially when the experience includes something very complicated. So you have to settle for less and talk about something in your league. Okay, for example, you can say something like this. My best friend is Hassan. We met each other through an online game that is Mobile Legends. He is my best friend because he's extremely understanding and charming. Okay, some people, they want to talk about how the personality of their friend sort of like influence them to get close to their best friend. However, I would suggest that you settle for something simpler, but if you want to make it better, just use less common lexes. Next, helpful tip 8. Use Rexam for general information. Rexam or Rexam fit. Okay, Rexam means reason and example. Okay, it is very crucial to have a best friend. This is because, or this is due to the fact that, and then you give your own example. Okay, this will help you to elaborate your points better. Okay, you can use the word for instance. For example, when one is sad, a best friend can cheer him or her up and they can talk about their problems to lighten it. Okay, in my case, as for me, and then you can share your experience. Next is helpful tip 9. Whatever you talk about, you have to minimize the fillers. Okay, fillers are words that you utter to fill the gaps from one word to another, from one ideas to another. Some fillers are in form of word and some are just plain sound with no meaning like Is that familiar? Do you also do that? Okay, what you have to do is just replace the fillers with the sound of nothing. Okay? So when you do not know what to say, you just take a few seconds to gather your thought and keep quiet. Is that okay? Rather than saying, my best friend, it's better, right? To keep quiet. Alright, helpful tip number 10. Long fillers also means that you have to simplify your ideas. Okay, long fillers send us a message that you are not able to come up with that idea. Remember, we only have 1 minute. We do not have any time to waste. So once you realize that you have long fillers or your R is too long, you have to simplify your idea. Alright? Next, or the last tip is finish your line. Okay, you know, right? For some schools, they will tell that you are out of time or time's up by ringing a bell, or perhaps the timer will buzz off. Alright? So some students, they tend to not finish their line, and then it will be like simply cut off there and then. But don't do that. As long as your sentence is still undone or is still not finished, you haven't finished that particular sentence, you just finish it first. By that way, your sentence can still be counted as your point. Alright, now let's start with the statement and personal experience. Okay, let's look at this example. You see here, lost item. We've seen this question just now. So you can say something like this. Losing a favorite item can be depressing, and I experienced this too. Something that I lost is my mobile phone. You see, you relate. You give 2 sentences with a statement, and then you relate to your personal experience. It was a Samsung Z Flip 5, and my father gave it to me. It was purple and quite impressive. I'm sure we all can relate it with our personal experience. Okay, let's look at another one. My favorite local food. Talk about your local food, favorite local food, what the food is, where you usually get the food from, why do you like the food. Do you have any idea how are we going to introduce the topic through a statement? Yes? No? So you can say something like this. Now, everybody has their own favorite food, and then relate to your personal experience. And my favorite food is char kway teow. I really love char kway teow because I grew up eating char kway teow almost every day, made by my grandmother. You see, it makes it easy. because you are relating to something you know. And then you can continue with the question you can continue answering the new questions in the question that you get. And lastly, okay, let's try another one. Introduce the topic through a statement. Okay, what your favorite video is, why is it your favorite, and how the video can be improved, whether you would make a YouTube video. Okay, what kind of statement can you make? You can say something like this. Everybody I know likes to watch YouTube nowadays. That's your statement. And then relate to your personal experience. As for me, I have a favorite video too, and I watch it every day. Sometimes I watch it when I come back from school, at night, and whenever I have free time. You see? You're talking about something you're familiar with, so you will not stutter. Alright, that's all from me. Let's continue with Teacher Aiman.
Hi, Assalamualaikum and good day everyone. Now you are with me, Madam Nur Aiman Ahmad Tajuddin from SMK Johari, and I am going to be sharing with you some strategies on how to tackle the part 3 of your speaking test, which is the collaborative discussion part. Now, first of all, let's try and look at what this part is all about. Basically, this part is meant for you and your partner to share your ideas, your opinions and attitudes by talking, asking questions and discussing together. Here in this part, you are not going to be judged on whether you finish the task, but rather on how well you use English during the discussion, especially how you express your opinions, explain your reason and respond to each other. Now, you don't really necessarily have to agree with your partner. What matters is that you share your thoughts clearly and give reasons for what you have to say. But personally, well, my personal advice would be to just agree with your partner. The reason being is simple. When you disagree with your partner, it is not enough by you saying, I disagree with you, or I don't feel that way, but you need to provide a counter argument or justify why you disagree with your partner. So if you struggle to find ideas or to justify your own opinion, I would strongly advise that you just agree with your partner, because when you agree with your partner, all you have to do is just repeat what they have said. Now, in this part, you are going to lead the conversation and not the examiner. So it is very important that you take your time, especially at the start, and take turns politely while building the conversation together. Okay? Now, for this part of the test, I have done quite a number of sharings on YouTube, which is on Sora. So basically, Sora is a strategy that students can use to maintain discussion and make a decision together in part 3. You can refer to previous sharings on SSTP channel for more info. I did one sharing on Sora last year, and I did one sharing of Sora back in 2021, and there's a couple of sharings on Yayasan Impak as well, which is a collaboration with JPN Kedah. So please feel free to browse through, and you can find sharings of Sora on YouTube. Therefore, I'm not going to touch on Sora in this session, but I will focus on the further discussion task, which is the HOTS question. So how to tackle difficult, HOTS question in speaking test. Many students, even the good ones, dread these questions at the end. Now, my first tip would be, you need to understand the goal of these questions, of this part. Basically, this part is not about you being right and to see how much you know about something. It is about showing your ability to speak at length, use a range of vocabulary, and for you to connect ideas. Now, the questions for HOTS will usually be related to the same theme as the earlier collaborative discussion, but it is more abstract and more global. Now, tip number 2. Be prepared with useful phrases to speculate. Now, speculation is key for more abstract questions. It allows you to explore possibilities and show a wider range of vocabulary beyond just stating facts. It's I think it's a great way for you to sort of like stretch your answer. So what can you do to speculate? What can you say when you want to speculate? Perhaps this is because people are becoming more aware of, or it could be due to the lack of education on the topic. One possibility is that the government needs to implement stricter regulations. So these are some of the sample or examples of useful phrases for you to speculate. I'm sure you can sort of like prepare your own phrases. Anything that, you know, allows you to speculate something that you're comfortable with, not too mouthful. Now, tip number 3, be prepared with useful phrases to compare. Many questions would require you to consider different sides of an issue. Now, using comparison phrases, it will help you to structure a balanced and thoughtful argument, showing that you can see an issue from multiple angles. So how can you say it? What can you do to compare? Compared to the past, I think people are now more, or while some people believe that, others argue that. On the one hand, this approach is beneficial but on the other hand, it has its drawbacks. Now, tip number 4 would be to be prepared with useful even if phrases to talk about situations which are hypothetical. Now, the examiner might ask what if or hypothetical questions in part 3, which is the further discussion task. Now, using phrases like this will help you to show that you can think creatively and logically about complex or future-oriented scenarios. So what can you say when you want to, talk about hypothetical situations? Even if people disagree on this issue, I still think it's important to. Or even if this might not happen in the near future, it's a possibility we should consider. Or even if it seems impossible, we could still take small steps to mitigate the situation, mitigate the harm. Okay, now tip number 5 would be to use AAA method to stretch a longer response. What is AAA method? Step 1, you admire the question. Step 2, you admit that your answer might be wrong. Step 3, you answer the question. Now, when you admire the question, okay, let's talk about the AAA method first. When you admire the question, I think that this is a fantastic way for you to buy yourself a few extra seconds for you to think. It shows the examiner that you're engaged with the situation and taking it seriously rather than just blurting out the first thing that comes to your mind. Now, it makes you sound natural, make you sound more thoughtful. Okay, so many candidates would normally, this is something that I see among my students, they like to rush when they want to answer part 3, and we all agree that part 3 can be quite difficult. So take time, buy time, because you're not given time for you to think for part 3, the further discussion task. Unlike the first part of part 3, which is a collaborative discussion, you'll be given time, about 20 seconds for you to think of what you want to say. But here, you're not given that time, and therefore, buy time. So what can you say when you want to show that you admire the questions? That's a very interesting question. I've never really considered that before. Wow, what a good question. It's quite challenging, but I'll give it a try. That's a thought-provoking question. So here, it shows that you truly admire the questions, and, the examiner will sort of like agree with you, assessor, Now, step 2, admit that your answer might be wrong. Now, this technique lowers the pressure on you to have the perfect answer. Now, the SPM speaking test isn't about you being an expert, so you don't have to give the most amazing answer, but rather we want to show that you can attempt. So it's about showing your ability to use complex language. By admitting you don't have all the answers, you're going to sound more humble and more mature, which is a great quality for a good speaker. Okay, so what can you say when you want to show that you might not have all the answer? To be honest, teacher, I'm not an expert in this topic, but from what I've read. Or you can say, you know what, teacher, I haven't experienced this personally, but I can imagine that. Or you can say, this is just my opinion and others might see it differently. Now step 3, which is answer the question. Now this is the part where you give your main point. You actually answer the question. Just now you're just like buying time, trying to stretch your answer so that you can show you can sustain a 1-minute talk. Now after using the first 2 steps to buy time and sort of like set a humble tone, you need to provide a clear and direct answer. This shows the examiner that you can structure your thoughts and get straight to the point. So how do you start answering the question? You can say, from my perspective, one important reason is, the way I see it, I feel that. Personally, I believe that. This is mainly because, okay? So if you combine all 3 steps, how is it going to sound like when you first start to answer the further discussion task? You will start somewhat like this. Well, teacher, that's an interesting question. I've never been asked that kind of question before. I have to be honest, I'm not an expert in this, and therefore I might be wrong. But the way I see it, I feel that. Now, here's a catch. If you don't practice from now on how to sound natural when you want to respond to the hot questions, chances are you're going to sound very robotic, sound so rehearsed. So we want you to try and practice this strategy. Starting from now, this is what? Middle of August. So you still have around 2 months, and I'm sure that by the 3rd week of you practicing this, you will be great. So the next time your teacher asks you, Shafiq, where's your homework? Teacher, that's an interesting question. Now, how do I say this? Macam tu lah. So your teacher will get annoyed. So never mind, just practice this. Okay. So just now we have learned on how to speculate, how to compare, how to use the even if, how to answer hypothetical questions, and how to use AAA method when you want to stretch longer response. So let's try and see how a sample response would look like if you combine these 2 strategy, which is the AAA and speculate. Wow, that's a really interesting question. I've never really thought about it in detail before, but I'll try to answer. To be honest, I am not an expert on marketing or anything. But from what I see every day, social media definitely has a big influence on what we buy. The way I see it, I feel that social media makes people feel like they need certain products to fit in or be like others. Perhaps this is because of influences. When a famous person uses a product, their followers often feel pressured to buy it. It could be due to a fear of missing out or FOMO, which social media creates very well. People see their friends or favorite celebrities with something new and immediately want it. I suppose that in the future, this will only get worse as social media becomes even more powerful. So the first part is a AAA, starting from wow until they need certain products to fit in or be like others, okay? And the following, perhaps this is because that is when the candidates start to speculate. Now let's try with the second sample response. If you utilize AAA and you try to compare, that's a very thought-provoking question. I think it's a topic that many people are talking about. I'm not entirely sure, but my general feeling is that social media has completely changed how people buy things. Personally, I believe that it has made buying a much more visual and emotional experience rather than a practical one. Compared to the past, this is what you start comparing. When people saw products in magazines or on TV commercials, social media makes it more personal. On the one hand, this is good because you can read reviews and see real people using the products. But on the other hand, it also leads to impulse buying and comparing yourself to others. In contrast to traditional advertising, social media makes you feel like you are part of a community, and that feeling can be a powerful motivator to buy things. Students, I know that this might look far-fetched, very long response, but then again, if you allow yourself to sort of like practice with this strategy, I am sure that you will be able to utilize AAA method and couple it with comparing strategies so that your response will be have more substance. Now the final sample response, which is a AAA method coupled with even if statement. What a great question. It's quite challenging, but I'll give it a try. I haven't experienced this personally, so you admit that might be wrong, as I'm not a big online shopper, but I can imagine that social media has a huge impact on what people choose to buy. From my perspective, one important reason is that it creates trends at a much faster pace than ever before. Even if people are aware of the marketing tactics used on social media, I think they still fall for them. It's easy to see a new gadget or a new fashion trend and be convinced that you need it. Even if this might not happen in the future, I believe that social media will eventually be the primary way people discover and buy things. From clothes to cars, we could still consider how to be more critical of the content we see online. So, there you go. I've provided you with 3 sample response, and I think that you'll be able to create more sample response if you try and utilize all this strategy. And with that being said, I wish you all the best for your SPM and hoping that you'll be able to make use and benefit everything that we have shared today. Thank you, everyone.